Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 178. Shizun is selling flowers. The next morning, Chu Wanning woke up with dark circles under his eyes. He didn't sleep well at all last night, so he looked especially gloomy. His originally cold face was now covered with a thin layer of ice. There was no warmth that can be glimpsed from it. He pushed the door open and saw Mo Ran washing clothes outside. Why is he washing clothes so early in the morning? Didn't he wash them last night? Seeing him coming out of the house, Mo Ran seemed a little embarrassed. His face was covered in soap foam as he turned to greet Chu Wanning. Shizun. Yes. Sun Sunyang kept her promise. With the money she took, she sent the food to every house in the morning. I put ours on the small stone table in the yard. Shizun, go and eat some breakfast. What about you? I've already eaten. Mo Ran's arm was soaked in the sparkling water, their lines were strong and refreshing. After you've eaten, we'll go sell the butterflies and flowers together. The food Sun Sunyang gave them was very simple, but the amount was not small. There were actually 3 big steamed buns. He sat in the small yard and slowly ate the steamed bun. The sun rose from the east, and the sunlight shone through the grape trellis, creating mottled shadows on the table. He turned his head and looked at Mo Ran's tall back, and a vague feeling of warmth surged in his heart. He took a big bite of the steamed bun. The appearance of the golden hatang and the red spiritual butterfly immediately caused a huge commotion in the market on Flying Flowers Island. All the fishermen on the island swarmed over to take a look. Even those who didn't plan to visit the market today were attracted by the sight of the golden hatang and the red spiritual butterfly. Flowers. What's so special about flowers? Haven't you seen flowers before? Golden hatang. It was made with spiritual energy. It will bloom all year round. It can even transmit sound. Wow. Where is it? Where is it? A huge number of people came to check them out. Look at those butterflies. What's so good about butterflies? There are a lot of them in spring. It's red. It's made of spiritual energy and can drive away small evil spirits. It's very beautiful and obedient. It won't run around and will fly around you. Ah. Really? Where? Where? Another wave of people rushed over. Sun Sunyang was sleeping in her mansion when she heard the news. He couldn't help but take a few of his attendants to the market. Before they reached the entrance, they saw streaks of golden red light gushing out from the crowd in the distance. Some people couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. She felt as if her heart was being scratched by ants. She pushed away the surrounding villagers and walked over to take a look. She saw the 2 cultivation masters who had come yesterday. One of them had a bright smile on his face and was performing tricks to attract bees and butterflies, drawing interest in the business. The other one was expressionless and stood under the tree with his arms crossed. He didn't say a word and remained silent. Butterflies for sale. Butterflies for sale. The handsome man turned around and smiled at the other man with a dull face. Shizun, why aren't you shouting? Huh? Chu Wanning snorted coldly in his heart. He didn't know how to spell the word shout. Could it be that he had to shamelessly act like the boorish Mo Weiyu, shouting flowers for sale? Hatang blossoms for sale, in front of everyone? Don't even think about it. How much for the butterflies? They felt that such celestial objects must be very expensive. The crowd hesitated for a long time. Finally, someone dared to ask for the price. Mo Ran said, 10 gold coins for one. Chu Wanning coughed behind him. Mo Ran said again. 3 copper coins for one. So cheap. The surrounding people were shocked. They all came forward to buy. Mo Ran handed a butterfly to the left and a flower to the right. While he was busy, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a little girl in ragged clothes in the distance. She was biting her fingers, looking longingly at the bustling scene here. Mo Ran smiled and didn't say much. He suddenly closed his 5 fingers, forming an extremely beautiful butterfly. He gently blew and the butterfly floated to her side across the sea of people and landed on her braid. The girl was stunned. Her face was full of astonishment. She walked a few steps hesitantly, then stopped and shook her head. She had no money. Forget about 3 copper coins, she didn't even have a single one. Moran waved his hand at her and mouthed the words "for you" to her. Then he winked, smiled, and turned his head away, continuing to busy himself. Sun Sunyang watched as the dazzling and beautiful spiritual items were bought. A young lady who loved beautiful things directly put a hatang flower in her black hair bun. In an instant, her head of black hair sparkled brightly and shone with an indescribable air of nobility. The madam couldn't help herself anymore. "These butterflies and flowers, I want them all." Moran raised his eyes, his smile undimmed. "I was wondering who was so generous." "So, it was you, Sunyang. How many are left?" "Count them, I'll take them all back to the residence." "That won't do." Moran smiled. "It's a first come, first serve basis. Others came before you and they haven't finished buying. I can't let you have the things first." Sun Sunyang looked at the crowd of villagers and immediately became anxious. She was afraid that they would be sold out. She said, "Then I'll pay more for them." "I can't make the decision." Moran said, "I'm just helping. You have to ask my Shizun about the price." Sun Sunyang went under the tree and found the aloof flower seller Chu Wanning. "Cultivation master, sell all those flowers and butterflies to me. We're all businessmen, the price can be negotiated." Chu Wanning said coldly, 10 gold each. Moran heard this and couldn't help but laugh. He turned his head and saw Chu Wanning's pair of dark eyes. He was amused for a moment, but he also felt lush softness in his chest. He couldn't help but grin and scratch his head. His deep dimples were very beautiful. Sun Sunyang was very rich and this money was just a small amount for her. She quickly ordered the servants to take away the golden hatang blossoms and spiritual butterflies. When she returned to her mansion, she immediately combed her hair into a high bun and inserted more than 50 brilliant and colorful golden flowers in them. She also let the butterflies dance around her. The servants saw that her head was covered in golden light. From a distance, she looked like a burning candle. They couldn't help but find it funny. However, since she was their master, they could only hold it in. They held it in until their ribs were about to break. In the end, they somehow managed not to laugh out loud. Sun Sunyang wasn't happy for too long though. Someone came to report that the 2 cultivators were selling other things in the market. She was startled when she heard this. With a cloud bun on her head that was flickering with bright light surrounded by bees and butterflies, she once again ran towards the market. "Butterflies for sale! Butterflies for sale!" Sun Sunyang squeezed through and put her hands on her hips. She was furious. "Didn't I just buy all of them? Why are there more?" Moran blinked. "They're newly made. Since they can be made again, why did you sell them to me for 10 gold each?" Moran smiled. "It's like this. You get up in the morning and go to a pan-fried bun shop where there are many people waiting in line to buy pan-fried buns. Everyone else is waiting in line but you want to cut in the line. The shopkeeper tells you that you can eat first, but you have to pay more. Isn't that right?" Sun Sunyang said angrily, You scammer, you." Just as she was thinking about how to refute this person's misleading reasoning, she suddenly saw the cultivator who had been silent all this time walking over. Chu Wanning's fingertip flashed with brilliance and a twin hatang flower appeared on his fingertip. Although Sun Sunyang was angry, her attention was also attracted by this. She asked, "What is this? Why is it different from the previous one?" "This kind of hatang blossom has been added with the rejuvenation technique. If you put it at the bedside before sleeping, it will keep your face radiant the next day. The effect will last for about 15 days. Chu Wanning casually handed the flour to Mo Ran and said to Mo Ran, "Go and sell it. 100 gold each." Wait. Sun Sunyang was afraid that these two people would say something about cutting in line and asked for extra money again. Although she was furious, she still said, "Don't take it away. I want this one. How many more can you make?" "I want all of them." Chu Wanning said, "I don't want to use the same technique too many times, so I'll only make 3. Then I'll give you 300 gold. Mo Ran, take the money." Chu Wanning said and lowered his head to create the other 2 twin Haetang blossoms. He then handed them to Sun Sunyang and then began to condense the 4th flower. Sun Sunyang was unhappy when she saw this. "Didn't you say you'd only make 3? This flower has been added with the art of fine sound." Chu Wanning said lightly, "When worn, it can make a woman's voice become more pleasant." Sun Sunyang was greedy for money, but she was even more greedy for time. She anxiously watched as this cultivator of Shi Sheng Peak create one spiritual flower after another. She was so angry that her teeth clenched, but she could only say, "All right, all right, all right. I'll buy it. I'll buy it." At night, when they went back and closed the door, the master and disciple sat at the table and calculated the money they've earned. They found that it was enough to feed and house the people they brought over until the fire on the other side was extinguished. Chu Wanning pushed half of the money to Mo Ran and kept the other half. He said, "Before we leave, we'll return the rest to Sun Sunyang." Mo Ran was stunned. "Why? Flying Flower Island is far away from Linyi and have few resources. They probably have limited supply of food and clothes, but look at the fishermen on the island, most of them have enough to eat and wear. Don't you think it's a bit strange?" "Yes." When he said this, Mo Ran thought about it carefully and felt that it was indeed the case. Chu Wanning said, "You'll know if you ask around. Today, when you were cleaning up the stall, I went to the village chief and asked him some things. In fact, this Sun Sunyang was originally a disciple of Linyi's Rufeng sect. Because her talent wasn't high, her master didn't really care about her. She was a disciple of the sect for 5 years, but she still only learned basic swordsmanship." Mo Ran was slightly surprised. "She's a disciple of the Rufeng sect? Then has Shizun seen her before?" "No." Chu Wanning said, "The village chief said that when she was 17, she followed the cultivators of the Rufeng sect when they were recruiting disciples in Flying Flower Island. Those cultivators of the famous sects took advantage of the long journey and the fact that the island was full of normal mortals. Even if they were bullied, they couldn't go all the way to the Rufeng sect to denounce them. Therefore, during that time, they committed crimes against the islanders. They ate for free, stole money, and even sexually assaulted young men and women." Chu Wanning said, "Sun Sunyang couldn't stand it, so she quarreled with her senior martial brothers and sisters. She was young and insignificant, but her temper was fierce. She offended her fellow disciples, and in the end, she was plotted against. After being stabbed by one of the senior martial brothers, she was pushed down a cliff." Mo Ran muttered, "So that's how it is. No wonder the village chief advised her that we were not disciples of the Rufeng sect. I didn't expect." Sigh. "Yes. She was lucky. That sword didn't hit any of her vital organ. After she fell into the sea, she was seen by a fisherman who was fishing at that time. That fisherman had 2 daughters, but they both died early. After saving her, he took her in as his adopted daughter and taught her how to fish, hunt and do business. Later on, her adopted father passed away and she inherited his legacy. Gradually, hers became the biggest family on Flying Flower Island." Chu Wanning paused for a moment and said, "You heard it too, right? She said that this year's harvest on Flying Flower Island wasn't good, so she was the one who opened the granary and gave aid to each family. Although Sun Sunyang's business was good, she only took money from cultivators. She never took a single cent more from the islanders. She would even subsidize the poor. Moran didn't say anything, but he remembered the little girl he saw in the market earlier that day, the one who wanted a hatang blossom. With that kind of shabby clothing and dirty face, it was obvious that she had lost her parents. However, she wasn't malnourished at all. Her cheeks were even bulging and her eyes were shining with a clear light. If it wasn't for someone helping her, such a young child who had to beg for food for a living, wouldn't she have become sallow and emancipated? Sun Sunyang goes out to sea more than 20 times a year. Each round trip takes 7 to 8 days, so she spent most of her life on the sea. Look at her luxurious residence, why bother to come and go in the wind when she's already in her 50s? Every year, she painstakingly brings the things on the island to Linyi to sell them for money. Then, from Linyi she brought back supplies to Flying Flower Island. Chu Wanning said, she obviously doesn't lack money. I understand. Moran felt bad after hearing that. He immediately got up, took the half of the money and was about to leave. Chu Wanning called out to him. Where are you going? I'm going to return the money I earned from her back to her. No, you sit down. Chu Wanning said lightly. Why are you so silly? Look, what kind of person is Sun Sunyang? She has a strong personality and is very strong-willed. What she hates the most are cultivators. Tell me, if you go over and give her the money like this, won't she beat you up and throw you out of the house? Moran thought for a while and suddenly felt a little pain on his spine. He couldn't help but sigh and ask, then what should we do? I've told the village chief that before we leave, we'll give the rest of the money to him and ask him to find a chance to pass it to Sun Sunyang. Chu Wanning said, at that time, we'll all be gone. After all, money is something that can make life better on Flying Flower Island. She won't dare refuse it. Moran lowered his eyes and thought for a while, then nodded. You're right, Shizun. We'll do as Shizun says. Chu Wanning sighed and said, there are many things in this world that can't be judged by just looking at the surface. Sometimes, even the layer under the surface may not be the final truth. I often remind myself that I need to calm down and judge people and things carefully. But sometimes, I still can't help it. His words made Moran very uncomfortable. Judging a person based on their appearance, determining right and wrong, right and evil based on what's on the surface, wasn't this what he had done to Chu Wanning in the past? Not just him, most people in the mortal realm would find it extremely difficult to maintain a pair of clear eyes and calm heart in the face of intense emotions. They would have to think deeply and see the truth hidden under the dust and sand. Just like what he did to Chu Wanning and what Nangong Si did to his mother. Fooled by their emotions and blinded by appearances, in the end they made mistakes causing hurt and pain that could never be undone. Perhaps the only exceptions were people like Chu Wanning, who seemed to be indifferent and detached but was determined to give everyone the benefit of the doubt and would try his best not to judge everything with the greatest malice. Therefore, the more Moran tried to understand him, the more he found that the Baidu immortal, who seemed to be more irritable than anyone else, had a heart that wasn't tainted by hostility. Under this person's arrogant and cold face, was actually a kind and tolerant soul. Because of this soul, he sympathized with Chu Wanning even more and an extremely strong desire to protect him arose in his heart. Perhaps it was because he had been drenched from the mountains of corpse and the seas of blood that he was able to understand that in this world, nothing was more precious than a pure heart. It was a chiang flute in the smoke of war, a flower in the trenches. Therefore, standing in front of such pure soul, the cultivation emperor Taxian Jun, who had once brought disaster to the world, silently thought. If there was a day when Shizun needed it, then even if he was covered in cuts and bruises, even if his blood ran dry, even if he died without a complete corpse, even if he had to sacrifice his head and damage his soul, he would protect this pure and untainted Baidu immortal. What are you thinking about? Oh, nothing. Moran smiled. I'm just thinking about some small matters. Small matters. Mo Ran pursed his lips and suddenly remembered that when they were on the way to the market in the morning, Chu Wanning said to him that he wanted to learn the sword flight technique. He said, "Shizun, please come with me." End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 179. Wanning. The two of them arrived at a cliff on the Flying Flower Island. There were jagged rocks there and below them was the surging waves of the ocean. When the waves crashed onto the rocks, they would instantly shatter into thousands of snowflakes. There was nothing in the surroundings except for the boundless sea, the sky, and the new moon. Mo Ran summoned the sword that was bound to him, then turned to ask Chu Wanning, "Why can't Shizun use the sword flight technique?" "It's not that I can't." Chu Wanning said, "It's just that I'm not good at it." "What do you mean you're not good at?" Chu Wanning waved his sleeves, his expression a bit more aloof but his ears were red. "I can only fly close to the ground." Mo Ran was a bit surprised. Flying a sword 1 inch above the ground or 100 meters above the ground consumed the same amount of spiritual energy. Since Chu Wanning could fly close to the ground, there was no reason why he couldn't fly high. He said, "Shizun, why don't you try? Let me see." Chu Wanning didn't summon his sword, but instead said indifferently, "I'm not willing to use a sword normally because I feel that weapons should be respected. It's not appropriate to step on them." Mo Ran didn't know why he suddenly explained, but he still nodded. "Shizun is right. But we can't just lie on the sword or hang on it and fly." Chu Wanning was at a loss for words, but when he looked up, he saw that man smiling at him under the moonlight. He couldn't help but feel angry. "Normally, if there's an emergency, I'll use the rising dragon array to fly." Mo Ran was startled. "That little dragon? It can become bigger." Chu Wanning said as he attempted to save some face but soon felt a bit embarrassed. However, during the fire at Rufeng sect, it was completely useless. It's afraid of fire." Mo Ran suddenly understood. "So, Shizun wants to learn how to use a sword, because you want to. In case of emergencies." Mo Ran did not utter another word. Back then, Linyi was billowing with thick smoke and raging flames. How many lives had been devoured by the sea of flames? At that time, Chu Wanning stood on his sword and watched as the mortals below were devoured by the tribulation fire. They were burned to ashes one by one and not even a single bone was left. However, the dignified Baidu immortal couldn't do anything. He couldn't ride his sword to carry anyone. Just how bad did Chu Wanning feel at that time? No wonder this person who would rather ride a carriage than ride a sword would suddenly make such a request to his disciple. "I understand. Don't worry, Shizun. I will teach you well." Hearing him say this, Chu Wanning did not say anything in reply. He lowered his eyes, making it impossible to determine what he was thinking. But in the end, he sighed and raised his hand as he said, "Huaxia, come forth." A golden light suddenly condensed. In this serene sea, sky, and moonlight, Mo Ran once again saw the holy weapon that had only appeared in a life and death battle with him in his previous life. Chu Wanning's blade of slaughter Huaxia. It was a long sword that Mo Ran obviously knew. In this world, there was probably no second person more suitable than Chu Wanning to be its sword master. Its decorations were light but its entire body was flowing with gold. Because the golden light was too dazzling, it was even slightly pale. Its radiance was endless as it very calmly flowed down from the sword, falling into the night like burning fireworks, but also like sliding white sand. "This is Huaxia," Chu Wanning looked at it as he talked. "You haven't seen it before. Its vicious aura is too strong, so I don't use it often." Mo Ran's feelings about the sword was a tad complicated. After a while, he nodded and said in a low voice, "It's a good sword." The night wind blew gently. Mo Ran stepped on the body of his sword. With a slight movement of his toes, the sword obediently and slowly rose a few inches from the ground. Mo Ran turned to Chu Wanning and said, "Shizun, give it a try, too." Chu Wanning also stood on Huaxia. Huaxia steadily rose a few inches from the ground, carrying Chu Wanning in a circle. "That's pretty good," Mo Ran said. "Try getting up a little more." As he spoke, he controlled the sword to fly to a position about 5 feet off the ground. He lowered his head and smiled at Chu Wanning. "Come up here." Chu Wanning pursed his lips and silently raised Huaxia so that it was at the same level as Mo Ran's sword. Mo Ran said, "There doesn't seem to be any problem, Shizun. It seems you can do it. Let's." He promptly shut his mouth, because he suddenly noticed that Chu Wanning's face was pale and the lines on his face were extremely tense. His drooping eyelashes were trembling like a blade of grass in the wind, as if he was doing his best to endure something. Mo Ran looked down and found that they were less than 5 feet away from the ground. When he looked up again, he stared at Chu Wanning in disbelief. He suddenly had a very absurd thought in his mind. It's not because Shizun did not know how to control the sword, but could it be because he was afraid of heights? Mo Ran. This was very awkward, and he also felt that it was very strange. Chu Wanning's Qinggong was very good. He could jump up and down towering buildings as he wished. He could jump a few feet with a tap of his toes. How could such a person be afraid of heights? But when he observed the person standing on the sword, the expression on his face was very tight, his eyes were wandering, and even if he was obviously trying to suppress it, there was still a faint trace of fear between his brows. Mo Ran probed, "Shizun." Chu Wanning's reaction was a little intense. He suddenly looked up. The night wind was ruffling his hair, but he did not raise his hand to brush it away. A pair of upturned phoenix eyes flashed with anger, behind the messy hair on his forehead were sparks of vigilance. Cough. Puff. What are you laughing at? My throat is dry, I'm coughing. Mo Ran did his best to hold back his laughter. He thought, there was no doubt about. He really was afraid of heights. No wonder he explained so much just now, he wanted to leave some face for himself. Since Shizun wanted to save some face, as a disciple, he naturally had to cooperate with Shizun and give him a way out. Mo Ran said, "The higher you go, the more difficult it is to control the sword. At the beginning, I could only go up to 5 feet. I needed to practice more." "You couldn't go up before?" "Yes." Mo Weiyu, who had soared hundreds of feet up the air when the first time he flew on a sword, gently nodded. "Maybe it wasn't even 5 feet, I didn't dare to look down at that time, so maybe 3 feet? In any ways, Xuemeng could have easily kicked me down then." Upon hearing that, Chu Wanning's heart slightly calmed down. He had always been embarrassed to tell anyone about his fear of heights, but now it seemed that there was nothing to be ashamed of. "Shizun, try not to look down. Just look at me." Mo Ran hovered above, thought for a while, then descended a little. "Don't pay attention to how much you go up. Just think of flying in about the same position as me, it's fine." Chu Wanning gritted his teeth and went up a little more. The thin and smooth blade of the sword was stepped on. The night wind was originally warm, but to him, it had become as cold and wet that a snake has slithered into his clothes, crawling and hissing. "Don't look down, don't look down." Mo Ran patiently repeated to him, stretching out his hand. "Come here, hold my hand." Chu Wanning focused as he took the lesson seriously and said, "No need, I can do it myself." Mo Ran did not force him. He knew Chu Wanning's temperament very well. When this person wanted him to do it himself, it was best to let him do as he pleased if the matter is not such a big deal. A person who was used to being a towering tree, was not used to relying on others. Accompanying by his side, standing shoulder to shoulder with him, made him feel free and comfortable. Although he really wanted to turn Chu Wanning into a soft spring water, fiercely knead him into his rough torso, let him break in his arms and dissolve in his blood. Like most men in the world, he would always have some unrealistic and frightening possessiveness towards the people he loved deeply. This was his natural instinct. The aggressive nature of a male instinct made him long to lock up Chu Wanning, endlessly entangling himself with him day and night, swallowing all of his passion. He longed for him to lie on a warm bed embracing this beautiful and fragrant golden beast and kept him from the eyes of anybody else but himself. He longed to own him, to have him under him for the rest of his life, his warm body forever wrapped around him. The beast that desired for his body couldn't help but want to leave dark and purple kiss marks all over that wouldn't fade. It wanted to fiercely love him every night, using the heaviest and hottest passion to fill his stomach to the brim, to feed him to the point of weakness. However, love made Mo Ran's heart soft and considerate. His love made him want to respect Chu Wanning, wanted to see him in high spirits, with light hooves and fast horses, wanted to see him wielding a sword out in the mortal world, shaking his sleeves to shake off the snow. He wanted to indulge him in the forest, to arrogantly grow up to the sky, benevolently casting shade, indulging him in luxuriant foliage, but also allowing him to break branches and get hurt in the wind and rain. Thus, his love put shackles on his instincts, put a bridle on his beastly desires, and made him lower his eyelids, suppress his burning hot breath, and became a man of good manners. In this life, he rather locked up his true nature and pull out his sharp fangs. In the previous life, he became possessive and selfish because of love. Now that he was reborn, it was because of love that he became forgiving and noble. Thus, he would not try to imprison Chu Wanning like he did in his previous life, nor try to change him in any way. This belated pure love made the former Taxian Jun willingly submit himself to be Chu Wanning's lifetime companion. The sword rose little by little, and when it reached a certain height, even if Chu Wanning did not look down at the ground, his fingertips could not help but tremble slightly under his wide sleeves. His scalp was numb. Mo Ran saw his nervousness, and said, "Don't be afraid, this is no different from Qinggong. It's not the same." Chu Wanning said, "Qinggong is dependent on oneself, sword flight is. Sword flight is also dependent on oneself. Sword flight is dependent on the sword." Chu Wanning said angrily. Mo Ran. He now somewhat understood why his Shizun's Qinggong was first class but was scared of sword flight. Chu Wanning was not used to relying on anything. He had always relied on himself, so only when he relied on himself that he felt most at ease. This knowledge made Mo Ran's heart ache and felt very distressed. He said, "It's okay, Shizun, you have to believe in Huaxia." But Chu Wanning's expression was far from calm. The anxiety and panic in his eyes could not be hidden. Mo Ran saw that his forehead was oozing with sweat and his feet were beginning to shake. He thought that this was not good and must not go on. If Chu Wanning fell from the sword now, the shadow in his heart would go even deeper. Thus, he said, "Let's go down first." Chu Wanning could not have asked for anything more, and so the two landed on the ground. He paused for a moment and then asked, "How high did we fly?" Mo Ran deliberately reported more when he said, "More than 50 feet." Chu Wanning was indeed shocked, as his eyes widened. "So high?" "Yes." Mo Ran smiled, "Shizun is so powerful, next time, even 500 feet will not be a problem." Hearing 500 feet, Chu Wanning's already pale face became even more unsightly. He waved his hand and did not say anything anymore as he stared blankly at Huaxia. Mo Ran thought for a moment and said, "Shizun, how about this? I'll take you around first so that you can get used to it. You don't have to take me, it's not like I haven't done it before." Yes, but earlier Shizun didn't look at the ground while riding the sword. This was exactly what he said before. Every time he rode on someone's sword, he would do his best to look at that person's back or some other point, doing his best to think that he was still standing stable on the ground. Mo Ran summoned his sword again, and deliberately made it wider. He stepped on it first and then turned to Chu Wanning to say gently, come up." Chu Wanning gritted his teeth, but still leapt up and landed lightly on the sword's hilt. Mo Ran said, "Stand firm." When he finished speaking, the sword received the order and in a flash, it flew straight into the clouds. At first, Chu Wanning closed his eyes out of habit, but when he heard Mo Ran's laughter, he was jolted awake. He pulled himself together and looked down. It would have been better if he didn't look, but once he did, Chu Wanning's hair stood on end. Mo Ran, this bastard, brought him along and flew towards the depths of the clouds at an extremely fast speed. Flying Flower Island was left far behind, becoming more and more distant. Beside his ears was the sound of the rushing wind. Even his robes were cold from the freezing night air. Beside his feet, there was nothing to lean on other than the saber. They flew towards the sea. At night, the blue-black sea water was like an ancient giant beast opening its black mouth, swallowing all the creatures that came and went. His cold eyelashes trembled slightly and Chu Wanning subconsciously wanted to close his eyes again, but he heard Mo Ran say behind him, "Don't be afraid, nothing will happen." "I am not afraid." Chu Wanning's face was as white as paper. Mo Ran smiled, "All right, you're not afraid. Then if you feel cold or bored, just let me know and I'll bring you back to the island." Chu Wanning did not say anything. He knew that Mo Ran was saying this to save him from embarrassment. After all, a cultivator who was shivering from cold while on his sword was much more imposing than a cultivator who was shivering on his sword. Mo Ran saw that he could not take it anymore but still stubbornly refused to speak. He could not bear to see him like that and so he said, "I'll make the sword bigger." He raised his hand and expanded the sword 5 or 6 times more, enough for him to stand side by side with Chu Wanning. "Shizun, in a few more days, the tribulation fire in Linyi will be extinguished. We will return to Shisheng Peak, but what about the people we brought with us?" As he spoke, he tried to loosen the tense Chu Wanning who was as tight as a bowstring. Chu Wanning was really amazing as he could still actually think despite his tension. He said, "We can bring them back to the region of Shu." We can bring them to the region of Shu. After the tribulation fire, Linyi will be nothing but scorched earth and won't be suitable for people to live in." Mo Ran said, "All right." He looked at Chu Wanning's pale face. After a while, he really felt sorry for him, so he asked, "Should we go back?" "Let's wait a little longer." Mo Ran expanded the sword a few more times and asked Chu Wanning to sit down as it was much better to sit than to stand. He opened a barrier which made Chu Wanning turn his head and asked him, "What are you doing?" "It's just a cold barrier." Mo Ran's gaze was very gentle. "We're up too high, it'll be cold." Chu Wanning let him do as he pleased. The barrier was of the same kind as the barrier he made, which was shimmering with haitang blossoms. The only difference was that his was golden in color while Mo Ran's was red. With this layer of translucent enchantment, even though he knew that it had no other effect except for dispelling the cold, he suddenly felt that there was an additional layer of protection around him, or perhaps it was because looking through this layer of enchantment, the ocean was no longer frighteningly dark. In short, Chu Wanning's tense body gradually relaxed, and his breathing gradually became less labored. Mo Ran sat beside him and smiled. "Shizun, look over there." "What? Do you see it?" Chu Wanning looked in the direction he pointed for a long time, then frowned. "There's nothing there but the moon." "Yes, it's the moon." Chu Wanning was slightly startled and said, "What's so good about it?" "It looked the same if you look from the ground." Mo Ran smiled. "This is the first time I've sat with Shizun to admire the moon." Chu Wanning did not respond. After a while, when Mo Ran thought that he would not say anything, he suddenly said softly, "It's not like we haven't seen it together before." "What?" Mo Ran was a little surprised, turning his head to look at him. The moonlight fell on Chu Wanning's handsome face. His skin was like pure white petals in the cold night, and under the 2 curtains of thick eyelashes, there seemed to be memories deeper than the ocean in his eyes. "It's been so long ago, you might have forgotten." Chu Wanning said. Don't worry about it. Mo Ran did not know what to say for a moment. He had lived for much longer than the Chu Wanning in front of him. Many of the past events were not so clear anymore. Even when Chu Wanning remembered something from their shared past, he did not necessarily hide it in his heart. He looked at Chu Wanning's side profile, feeling guilty, but in that guilt, he could not help but feel a trace of sweetness. He could not help but think of that brocade pouch and the words he was about to ask yesterday. Chu Wanning kept their knot of hair, kept many memories. Why? Kaidi Town, Jinchinj Lake. During the Heavenly Rift incident, he risked his own life to save him. Why? Previously, he did not dare to make any further speculation, thinking that it was too presumptuous of him. But in the past 2 days, every inch of discovery had been fanning the flames of his wild aspirations. Why? Shizun. Blood surged in his chest, surging with excitement. His throat was very dry. When he stared at Chu Wanning, his eyes were extremely bright. He suddenly wanted to go over, kiss his face and muster up the courage to ask him, Do you like me? Riding the sword between heaven and earth, gave Mo Ran a vague vision. It was as if the two of them no longer had any ties in this world, as if the love and hate of the past had not happened. Everything was as tranquil and pure as the moonlight falling through the clouds. He felt that the tender seedling in his chest had finally grown into a large tree. The thick veins pushed open the lifeless soil, turning over the thick smell of blood from the depths of the earth. Chu Wanning saw that he was silent for a long time, so he turned around and asked, What's wrong? Mo Ran did not answer. His head was fuzzy and he longed to possess him, to hug him, to kiss him. He couldn't help but lean over. Then, he suddenly realized that after he cast the barrier, although Chu Wanning had slightly recovered, he was still pressing his pale lips and his complexion still looked very bad. He hugged himself, his slender fingers subconsciously clasping his arms, tightly gripping the cold cloth. Even when Chu Wanning was afraid, he didn't grab onto others, but himself. Mo Ran was stunned for a moment. Then that aggressive light in his eyes was extinguished and turned into tiny bits of very gentle flame. The hands that originally wanted to abruptly hug him stopped. A moment later, it touched the back of Chu Wanning's cold hand. You. Chu Wanning was shocked, a hint of red appearing on his pale face, but he said in a low and alert voice, What are you doing? He wanted to pull his hand away, but Mo Ran held it tight and was not willing to let go. Chu Wanning only felt that his 5 frozen fingers fell into an extremely warm hand. From the center of his palm to the tips of his fingers, they were tightly wrapped and stuck together. Don't always rely on yourself. Mo Ran said, I'm here, you can rely on me, too. If Chu Wanning had been calm and composed, it would have been impossible for him not to feel the affection in these words no matter how slow or hesitant he was. Moreover, there was that pair of black eyes that were seriously, solemnly, gently, and affectionately gazing at him. Chu Wanning's heartbeat instantly became as apprehensive as a torrential rainstorm, knocking into his soul bit by bit. He didn't dare look into Mo Ran's eyes again, suddenly turning his face away and lowering his head. It was too hot. How could it be so hot when they were 100 feet up in the air? He had always been aloof and calm, but at this moment, it was as if he had suddenly stepped into a territory that he was completely unaware of. The armor on his body had been stripped off and the sharp claws on his fingers had been cut off. In front of Mo Ran's sudden straightforwardness, Chu Wanning's usual counterattack seemed to be ineffective. The man passionately pried open his clamshell, using his eyes to stare at the sparkling white flesh inside. Whether it was the glowing pearls or the fleshy sweet clam meat, they were all exposed to the man's eyes. This haughty and calm man had thrown away his helmet and armor, and was suddenly overcome with panic and helplessness. What to do? What should he say? He realized that his hand was still tightly held by Mo Ran, tightly pressed together with his. He didn't know what to do. Anxious and nervous, the rims of his eyes turning slightly red, he subconsciously wanted to pull his fingertips away. But the moment he moved, Moran tightly grabbed onto him. The man's palm was soaked with sweat, it was moist. "Don't take it away." He was so strong and stubborn. For some reason, Chu Wanning suddenly felt that there was a hint of sadness in his words. Moran's eyes burned, he stared at him for a long time, then said in a low and hoarse voice, "Chu Wanning. What did you call me? I was wrong." At this moment, Chu Wanning's body was even more tense than before. His heart was beating faster than when started to ride the sword earlier. He was not used to it, very much not used to it. He tried his best to clear his path and make one last desperate struggle before falling into this great abyss. He lowered his eyes and said, "Well, you know you're wrong, but it's not hope." Moran's heart was very hot, and finally, without thinking, he blurted out, "Wanning. Less." Chu Wanning didn't have time to say the last syllable. When he heard this gentle voice with a sigh, his mind buzzed and in an instant, it went blank. He couldn't say the last syllable anymore. Hopeless. Hopeless. They hesitated outside the quagmire of love and desire for so long, and finally couldn't help but step in and fall into it. From then on, they were trapped in an inescapable net, deep into their bones. Moran's voice was soft and hoarse, he stared at him, "Wanning, in fact, these few days I have been wanting to ask you." His heart was burning fiercely. Moran tightly held Chu Wanning's hand, his fingers trembling. "No, I won't ask you." Chu Wanning had just let out a sigh of relief when he heard Moran say the next sentence. "I won't ask you anything, I just want to tell you." Moran was decisive and resolute, never to turn back. In one breath, he used all his courage. "I like you." His heart was trembling violently. "I like you, not the love of a disciple for a Shizun, it's my audacity, I like you." Chu Wanning closed his eyes, his fingertips trembling in that person's warm and humid skin, until gradually the tremor stopped. How could it be? How could it be? He must have heard wrong. He was so ugly, so fierce, so bad at talking, so uninteresting. He was a good-for-nothing, a terrible fool. Who would like him? "I like you." Chu Wanning was stunned for a long time. He was shocked and disoriented. He didn't know what to say. He was actually feeling bitter and frightened. His mind was almost completely blank and he wanted to act like he used to. He wanted to say ridiculous, but after a lengthy contemplation, he still couldn't find the right words. After a long time, Chu Wanning said hoarsely, without rhyme or reason, "I have a bad temper. You're very nice to me. I'm old. You look younger than me." Chu Wanning was almost anxious. He said helplessly, "I'm so ugly." This time it was Moran's turn to be stunned. He opened his eyes wide and stared at the extremely handsome man in front of him. He didn't understand why such a good-looking person would feel ashamed of his own appearance. Seeing that Moran didn't respond to that, Chu Wanning's heart became even more flustered. He lowered his head and said, "I'm not good-looking. Not as beautiful as you." He was silently muttering like this when suddenly his cheek was touched by a warm hand. He heard Moran sigh, which was actually gentler than tonight's moonlight. "Would you please look into my eyes?" "Chu Wanning, your eyes." Moran's eyes were warm, it reflected the figure of a man in white. He said, "Do you see it? That's the most good-looking person in the world." Chu Wanning stared at him. Although his heart was in turmoil, his face that had been frozen for a long time didn't have much of an expression. Moran held his hand, gripping it tightly as he sweat profusely. He softly said, "I like you." Chu Wanning felt as if he was being pricked, his fingers trembling. After a moment, he suddenly lowered his head. "I like you" was like a sharp knife, stabbing into his heart, causing his blood to flow, and it couldn't be stopped. Chu Wanning's eyes reddened. Probably because he really had waited for too long, he actually didn't know that when he heard these words, he would have this kind of reaction. He was very anxious, almost to the point of tears. He said, "I'm no good. I've never been liked by anyone. I've never been liked by anyone. There's never been anyone who felt happy, proud, or lucky because they had me. For 32 years. No one has ever liked me." When Mo Ran heard these words, he looked at the man in front of him who was lowering his head, not even willing to raise his face, and suddenly he felt hurt, so much pain, it was so painful that it cracked his heart, and crushed his bones. He was his treasure, but it had been covered in dust for almost half of his life. He was in so much pain that he didn't know what to say, he didn't know how to say it. In the end, he could only clumsily hold Chu Wanning's hand tightly as he repeatedly said, there is. Someone likes you. I like you. Someone wants you. Someone wants you very much. Stop feeling so inferior. Don't be so stupid. Don't treat yourself as if you are worthless. Idiot. Silly Chu Wanning. I like you. After a long time, Mo Ran asked him, then what about you? What? Mo Ran lowered his eyes, his eyelashes fluttering. I'm so stupid, so insensible, so unreliable. I've also done many unforgivable things. He paused, then said in a small voice, can you like me, too? Chu Wanning had already raised his face, but when he heard him say this, he suddenly met that pair of soft black eyes and actually panicked. He didn't know where he got the strength, but he suddenly managed to pull his hand away and turned his face away. He didn't nod, but he also didn't shake his head. There was no affirmation nor denial. But Mo Ran clearly saw that Chu Wanning's ears had turned red, all the way to his beautiful neck. That brocade pouch. Don't say it, Chu Wanning suddenly said in a muffled voice, this time his whole face flushed red. Don't say it. Mo Ran looked at Chu Wanning's unwilling, embarrassed, angry and confused appearance. Light and shadow moved in his eyes, the moonlight lingering. He sat over, stretched out his hand again and caught Chu Wanning's fingertips. Chu Wanning was trembling. Mo Ran's fingers were also lightly trembling. He covered Chu Wanning's slender fingers and then, one by one, in a way that had never been done before. 10 fingers tightly interlocked as their palms pressed together. Chu Wanning's face was flushed red as he averted Mo Ran's gaze even more. But this time, he didn't try to break free. And so, Mo Ran held Chu Wanning's hand, finally understanding in hindsight and nervously confirmed. Chu Wanning also liked him. He finally understood. End chapter.